Fallout from the strikes has only just begun, as Democratic Congressman Adam Smith, who serves as ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, writes, quote, "I have grave concerns about the impact that today's actions will have on international relations and the United States standing in the world. It appears to violate the very international laws and norms that have protected the United States and our partners and allies for more than 80 years. These actions run counter to everything that Donald Trump campaigned on. And rather than ending conflicts, the president has chosen to drag the U.S. into further foreign wars." Joining us now is the person who wrote that letter, Democratic Congressman and ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, Adam Smith. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday morning. As you say, as I read what you said, what I'm also thinking about is how the president has talked about this. And the way he's talked about it is as a business acquisition, right? Like, he's not talking about it as what military experts and all of us who have studied history see it as, which is like a haphazard regime change where you take the leader but don't get rid of the rest of the regime. And instead, he is talking about it as oil, as this, we're taking back what they took from us. We're only going to get rid of the CEO, so to speak, and then the rest of the company, we will run it, right? And I wonder what you think about that and how the idea of running foreign policy as like he's running the Trump Inc. of it all.
Yeah, well, two things. First of all, Secretary Rubio is completely wrong. This didn't have much to do with sort of enforcing the law at the Justice Department. This was a regime change operation. And now they use the excuse that Maduro was indicted, but as we all know, the Honduran president, who was convicted, they went ahead and pardoned. This was about regime change. This was about changing the power in Venezuela. And why? And that gets to the question you just asked. I think you have to believe that if Maduro, like a week ago, had called Trump up and said, let's make a deal, I'll let your oil companies in. You know, I'll let them go in and start, drilling for oil in Venezuela again. I think Trump would have been perfectly okay with Maduro. And he's made that clear in his press conference. That's what this is about. He wants access to the oil in Venezuela, which is basically the United States saying, because we are strong and powerful, we will take over a country that has a resource that we want. And that is completely wrong on a whole series of levels. But Trump has made it very clear that that is what this is about. And understand the history here. Until about 1976, that's sort of the way Venezuela was run. The Venezuelan president, in a whole series of corrupt deals, worked with foreign oil companies so that he and his supporters made money, and the oil companies made money, and the Venezuelan people got screwed. And then in 1976, they finally changed that, and that's what Trump is upset about. He wants back control of Venezuelans' oil. Now, I could go down a whole bunch of different roads as to why that's horrible foreign policy, but let's stop kidding ourselves about what it's about. Trump wants greater control of Venezuela so that U.S. companies, and presumably probably his family and his cronies, can exploit those resources and make money. That's what this is about.
Right. And so then, Congressman, how successful will they be at this greater control if all they've done is, in this effort at regime change, is just get rid of the head of the regime, but keep everybody else who were lieutenants of the head of that regime? And our colleague, David Noriega, was on in the early hours saying, this minister has been on television, that minister has been on television. The fact that state television is up says that the regime is still in power. So is the administration just being hopeful without a plan?
Sorry, I left out that second part, which you stated quite well. Okay, so the plan is to get control of Venezuela and use the oil, which is wrong on a whole series of levels. But also, even if you accept the plan at face value and say, okay, let's go get that done, this isn't going to get that done for all the reasons you just stated, because they don't really have a plan, as near as I can tell. Okay, Maduro's gone. Who's running the country? And Trump comes out yesterday and says, we're running the country. Really? How exactly? We have nobody in the country. You've got Mrs. Machado, who was the democratically elected president, who is internationally recognized. Apparently, Trump doesn't seem to think that she's adequate for the job. The vice president has stepped up now. So who is going to run Venezuela? How is this even going to play out within the, ridiculous is the wrong word, oppressive and wrong terms of Trump's plan here? He doesn't seem to have a plan for what comes next.
Congressman Smith, as you were answering that question, we got word in Secretary Rubio is on ABC right now. He said, quote, "We expect to see changes in Venezuela." He's not answering who is actually running Venezuela. Okay. So that is just right now.
Well, Secretary Rubio is right about that. There will be changes in Venezuela. Now, what those changes are, they don't seem to have the first clue about what they are. But let's step back and understand why this is a problem. All right, well, why does it matter? Okay, it matters, A, because you're going to have a further destabilized Latin America, and B, because this rules-based international order that we've all come to have a certain amount of contempt for, and I understand why. Post 9/11, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere, we pushed the boundaries of that rules-based international order because we thought our security interests demanded it, in part, in a way that was a mistake, without question. But that's the great irony of Trump. Trump ran, in part, exploiting the American people's rightful concerns about that and saying, yeah, that was wrong, that was stupid, I'm not going to do it. When, in fact, he's upping it even further and doing it even more and building off of that. Instead of learning the lessons about the limitations of regime change, he's diving right in and trying to do it wherever he can, which is dangerous and wrong, but it also undermines any sort of peace and stability. Ties back to Ukraine, to my mind. Part of the reason Trump is so sympathetic with Putin is he believes in strongman rule and spheres of influence, and he has sympathy for Putin. And that's incredibly dangerous for stability, certainly in Europe, but in Africa, in the Middle East, in the whole world. If we just say, might makes right, go take what you can, that's the world we had prior to World War II, which led to a whole series of disastrous global wars and that we tried to fix over the course of the last 80 years. This harms Americans' interests. This is not just an academic discussion.
Mm-hmm. Congressman Adam Smith, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We'll be watching your committee closely this week. Now we are joined by Democratic Congressman Raj Krishnamurthy. He's a member of the